so excited to be here today with Alexis from the PT Speducator. She is a friend of mine and we've met up a couple times now, but she is somebody that I've been following for a while because of her inclusive environment that she creates at her school. So she's here to talk all about inclusion. And of course, if you have any questions, you are welcome to comment below. We'll make sure to get an answer for you if we don't answer it here. But I'm going to let Alexis go ahead and introduce herself and tell us a little bit about who you are and how you've gotten to where you are today.
So my name is Alexis. I am from Georgia, as you can tell probably by my name, the Peachy Speducator. I've known I've wanted to be a special ed teacher since I was in middle school, so I went to college to do that. My first year out of college, I was a paraprofessional in a severe profound classroom, and I am now entering year 13 of teaching. I've taught grades K through 12. High school is my favorite. I currently teach a high school class for kiddos with autism. I'm in the self-contained setting, and so all my experience has been in the self-contained setting. And I love teaching students who have complex communication and medical needs. That's where my heart is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we've bonded over that as well, because high school was my heart and soul as well. And then I dabbled in middle school as well. But yes, the more complex learners are always been a favorite soft spot of mine as well. So I know at one point we had talked about medical equipment and how to use all of that in the classroom, because that is so new for some teachers. So I'll make sure to link that blog post below so we can talk more about that. But we're here today to talk about inclusion. So for those of us that may not be as familiar with what inclusion is, can you explain it a little bit?
Sure. So we hear some different definitions here and there, but my personal definition is, inclusion is ensuring that every person has the opportunity to fully participate in society, regardless of their, their ability, their gender, so many other things. But of course, when we talk about special education, we're talking about ability. So just making sure that everybody has the opportunity to participate in a setting or an activity, whatever that may look like for that individual.
Yeah. But what is not inclusion? Because I know there's other things that people are saying is inclusion, but there's lots of different definitions of what that is. So what is not inclusion?
So inclusion is not a student engaging in activities that they have the right to be doing in the first place. So for example, like a student eating lunch in the cafeteria, that's not inclusion, especially in the public school setting. But all students have the right to do that, so that's not inclusion. Eating in the like I said, eating in the cafeteria, going to the library, or joining an extracurricular activity, that's not inclusion. Those are things that all kids should have. All kids have the right to do anyway. Where inclusion comes in is, how do we make those opportunities accessible for everybody? So if it's something that basically, I think a good way to look at it is, I don't need, an IEP is not guaranteeing me the right to eat lunch in the cafeteria. I should be doing that anyway. So that's not inclusion.
Yeah. So even just a student who's supposed to get an elective class, if they're in a general education music class, then that's not really inclusion either. That's giving them their right to have a class,
Right.
but actively participating in concerts and performances and things like that. Like, yes, they are then a part of the program, a part of that class. So there's lots of different ways that we can be looking at this. And of course, if anybody has other thoughts, you're welcome to chime in as well. I know this is something that can get a little tricky with what schools say is inclusion and what is actually happening. So how did you first participate in like inclusive opportunities at your school? Like, how did you kind of figure out like this is something that I need to do more of?
So when I got to my school, there were some things in place, but not enough, really, in my opinion, and for my students and their ability level. So the first thing I did was creating in-school job opportunities. for my students. You know, they all have class jobs. We do have a coffee shop that our special education department and staff runs, and it's our school coffee shop. Students and kids come through and they buy coffee, but it's really neat because, you know, our students get a chance to put those IEP goals into real world practice. And so that was there, but creating additional opportunities. So for example, we had several jobs in the coffee shop, but for my students that were working on communication, then we expanded the job opportunities to include delivery to the principal or the counseling office, and then they would get to use their communication devices. So they still are working at the coffee shop, but it's really more tailored to what they need. And also, I do a lot of reverse inclusion, which is bringing people into my classroom and not so much just pushing out. So I do that as well. And then also sponsoring my school's Partners Club, which is it's like a peer-to-peer club with our students. We pair students with disabilities with students without disabilities. And, you know, now instead of, okay, well, my class is over here eating lunch, and then we've got everybody else. So our gen ed students sign up for lunch buddies. And so now our students, you know, they're at the table with, you know, with their peers. They're actually included in the groups, doing things like game days, or like a really popular thing we do is our Super Bowl party. I have students come into the classroom, and we bring like a big tent, and we have cornhole, and we have all of these different things, and our buddies rotate coming into our classroom through the day, so that my students tend to get easily overwhelmed with large crowds and things, but also it brings the other kids kind of into their world. It's not, I look at it as it's not so much trying to mold our students to what everybody else is and make them fit in everybody else's box. I like that, you know, the other kids get to come in and see what my kids are doing. And, you know, in my experience too, I found that, so I've worked at schools where I have been the only self-contained teacher, and I've also worked at schools where there have been other self-contained teachers, but I've actually experienced like a feeling of loneliness in both cases. And I feel like being a self-contained teacher can be isolating if you allow it to. And so for me, working with staff across the school, it actually, you know, I kind of look at it as a way of I'm creating inclusion opportunities for myself too, you know, getting out there and being a part of the, you know, the bigger school community. So I think it works out for everybody, and it's, you know, I've been very fortunate. I've had a supportive administration and school staff, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah. There's lots of things that you said in there that I want to make sure we hit on, is like, yes, your students are going out into the school community, doing things, showing their faces, being active participants in their school community. But then also you have the opportunity where you are bringing students, peers into your classroom to interact with your students in other ways, like playing games, having a Super Bowl party. I love the idea of even like a lunch buddy, of bringing a student and saying like, hey, like, let's be friends. Here's my friends. Like, let's all chat during lunch, or not. Like, some students just sit and eat lunch, and that's totally fine. But you are providing that opportunity for them to have that moment. If it is a social situation where like, hey, what are you having for lunch today? They can respond and be a part of the conversation with peers. So I love the flip of it, of doing both of those types of things. Like, yes, come into my room, but also we're going to be out here doing the things just like everybody else is. So love that. If teachers are looking for more opportunities to start more inclusive things in their school, where do you think they should start?
So every school's different. I would always say run things by your, you know, your administration first. But you know, aside from that, I say look around and look at, regardless of what age group you teach, what are students without disabilities doing in the school setting? And then think about, hey, how can I make this work, you know, for my students? You know, I would use PE for example. You know, going to the gen ed PE class is not for everybody. And so we have adapted PE at my school, but it also works out again to where we are able to have gen ed kids come in and do PE with us, also practicing for Special Olympics, and then they still earn a credit for, you know,
Mhm.
on their transcript. So again, making it work, um, you know, both ways. And I think also talking to families and students, you know, about what are their desires and what are their needs, and you know, looking at those IEP goals, how can we really you know, turn this into real world application, because we
Mhm.
know a lot of our students do struggle with generalization. It's one thing to practice something in speech therapy, or you know, to do a worksheet, but what does this really look like when I'm out and about and in the real world? So you know, just talking to people, read those IEPs, talk to families. And a lot of times you'll find out people, especially a lot of gen ed teachers, they think something is inclusion, but it's really not. But there,
Mhm.
I've found overwhelmingly that people are more than willing to help.
Yeah, that's the same thing that happened at my school at one point. There was a need for another club after school, and it was around the same time that like the Lego movies were coming out, all like the new ones. And so my students were really interested in Legos, and I was like, "Wait, your IEP goal is about following visual directions. Let me get those little books from Legos following the visual directions of like what piece do you need to build the car or whatever." And so I ended up getting a bunch of those Lego sets with directions, and we made a club out of it so that they would do it after school. But it was open to everybody in the school. It wasn't just my students. And so there was typical peers that would come there. And then students from other classes started coming, special education and general education. And so it became an opportunity of like, well, you like Legos, I like Legos. Actually, like I, as the teacher, was like, well, we're working on IEP goals, but at the same point, like this is a very appropriate thing, because when you go and get a shelf from IKEA, you're going to have to learn how to follow the visual directions to build the shelf. And so like it's a transferable skill to help generalize any adult living type of skill. So there is a
That's
need,
neat.
just think. Yeah. I loved it. It provided a lot of good opportunities, again, socialization. You know, when somebody was missing a piece, they would go, "Hey, can you help me find this piece?" And so it kind of created those opportunities to continue to grow and evolve. But again, in a more appropriate way. So
Right. And parents love that stuff. Like they love it when they see that, you know, the school is making an effort to include their children. So that's awesome.
yeah, definitely love that. What do you feel is the most important aspect of inclusion?
Oh, I would say an open mind. Because if you don't have an open mind to begin with, you've already placed limitations on
Mhm.
yourself, of, you know, or the situation about what's possible. I feel like if you have an open mind, then you know that leads to creativity,
Mhm.
and being able, you know, when the creative juices start flowing, you really can make any situation you know, inclusive, I think. So I think I think it's really important to have an open mind for sure.
Yeah, and I would say the same. I know you touched on it before, but talking with other staff members of like what are they seeing? Maybe there's another class that's looking for more partnership type things of like how can we support our school community a little bit more? And so like not that I'm saying special education classrooms are charity cases, because they are not. I'm gonna be
Right.
very firm with that. Like so it's not like come in because you got to read a story to us. Like no, that's not what we're here for. Like this is a actual opportunity, and being upfront of this is the expectation and this is kind of my thought and direction of where we need to go for inclusive opportunities, and just to make sure that teacher, if you are going to partner, has the same kind of understanding. So it's communication, it's open-mindedness, it's being okay to fail
Yes.
sometimes.
Yes.
There are opportunities that we put together and like this is going to be great, and your students hate it, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to force them to continue to do this opportunity, whatever it is.
Right.
um so let's reevaluate, let's pull back, let's do what we need to do, so that we can make sure it's best for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And
So
you'll be surprised at where things go, too. You know, like one year, I had a student that was, that was part of our partners club come in, and I had no idea with this young lady. She had come in, and I had students that were working on Switch toys, but I did not know she was also a member of the robotics team. And
Mm.
so what they wanted to do was they what's the word I'm searching for? Adapted some toys for us so that they were Switch accessible, and you really see how much people want to help, or even people like in our drafting class, like designing furniture and things that I may
Mhm.
not ask them to do, but it's kind of like a trickle out effect, I
Yeah.
guess, from people coming in. So you never know where things will lead.
Yeah. And I know we've kind of talked about it already, but is there any other tips or tricks that you have to get other staff members involved with more inclusive opportunities?
I think educating staff, because sometimes staff want to help, but they actually, just are not sure.
Mm.
I have had some experiences like with people saying things like, "Can you make him be quiet?" You guys are loud in the hallway, and it's like, no, you can't make anyone be quiet. But this is why Johnny
Mm.
does this, or
Mhm.
his disability. Causes him to XYZ. So I think educating other staff and the way they communicate, and what we're working on. And then when they learn those things, they really they become buddies with the kids, and
Mhm.
they kind of know where to go. I think sometimes just not being sure, people are hesitant.
Yeah.
So and I've had some wonderful administrators, and they've let me do like training sessions, and we do a lot of different like awareness months and things. And so when people are armed with that knowledge, they're more comfortable in dipping their toe in the pond, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I think the education of it is super important, whether it's, yeah, sending out a newsletter about a disability or inclusion opportunities or things like that. Like I think always we can always learn and grow and evolve as human beings, regardless if it's special education or not. So like more information is always better. So yeah, just keep educating the teachers that you work with.
Yeah.
And what other ways do you feel like do you want teachers to know about inclusion? Anything else?
Yes, so I think inclusion is always, always, always possible. There is nothing that I could think of that anybody could throw my way where I couldn't figure out some type of way
Yeah.
to make it inclusive for people with and without disabilities. And also, um, I want people to know inclusion is not about tolerating someone, it's about accepting people. And I think that's a big difference, because to me, tolerating means, oh yeah, we'll let you sit here, but we really don't want to be here. We're just kind of doing this because we have to. Whereas, acceptance is welcome, it's a welcoming, more of a welcoming attitude. So, again, inclusion is not about being tolerated, but being accepted.
Yeah, I love it. That's exactly where we're going to end this because that was amazing. I feel like that wrapped it all up really well. So, Alexis, thanks for being here. Where can others connect with you?
So you can find me on Pinterest, Teachers Pay Teachers, Instagram, Facebook, all the social things at the Peachy Speducator.